प्रणाम। द्वितीयम्पि तृतीयम्पि we can start with the morning chanting. Request Bhanteji for.
So that's how we'll do the अर्पणा और फिर हम इतिपिसो 3 बार करेंगे.
को screen share right there. को Deepak. I'll then put it on the screen.
So जो मैं पहली चांट करूंगा ये ट्रेडिशनली हमारे ट्रेडिशन में किसी भी मीटिंग या किसी भी इवेंट को शुरू करने से पहले हम करते हैं और इसके बाद हम इतिपिसो करेंगे which is the chant across the Theravadan world that remembers and memorializes the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Yoso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho svakhato yena bhagavata dhammo supatipanno yassa bhagavato savakha sangho Dhammayang bhagavantang sadhammang sasangham imehi sakharehi atharahang aropitehi abhipujayam. वे जो हैं अरहंत भगवान सम्यक संबुद्ध भगवान के द्वारा अच्छी तरह समझाया गया धर्म मार्ग को अच्छी तरह प्रतिपादित करने वाले श्रावक भगवान के श्रावक संघ उन भगवान बुद्ध धर्म और संघ की हम यथोचित सत्कार से पूजा करते हैं साधुनो भन्ते भागवा सुचिर परिनिप्पुतोऽपि पश्चिमा जनतानुकम्पमानसा इमे सखारे दुगतपणाकार भूते पटिकन्हातु कंदी घरतं हिताय सुखाय हमारा सौभाग्य की भगवान को महान निर्वाण की प्राप्ति के बाद भी आगे आने वाली पीढ़ी पर अनुकंपा थी सादर पूर्वक दी गई ये तुच्छ भेंट कृपया स्वीकार करें हमारे दीर्घकालिक हित और सुख के लिए अरहं सम्मा संबुद्धो भगवा बुद्धं भगवन्तं अभिवादेमि स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो धम्मं नमस्सामि सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो संघं नमामि अरहंत भगवान सम्यक संबुद्ध भगवान बुद्ध का मैं अभिवादन करता हूँ भगवान के द्वारा अच्छी तरह समझाया गया धर्म उस धर्म को मैं नमन करता हूँ भगवान के श्रावक संघ जिन्होंने मार्ग को अच्छी तरह प्रतिपादित किया, उस संघ को मैं नमन करता हूँ। अन्नमयं बुद्धस्य भगवत पुब्बभागनामकरं करोमासे। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमो तस्स भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा सम्बुद्धस्स। नमस्कार उन्हें जो हैं अरहंत भगवान सम्यक संबुद्ध। नमस्कार उन्हें जो हैं अरहंत भगवान सम्यक संबुद्ध। नमस्कार उन्हें जो हैं अरहंत भगवान सम्यक संबुद्ध। That's how we'll do the episodes now. और हम ये ट्रेडिशनली 3 बार करते हैं, ये जो एपिसोड चांट है। हालांकि हमारे ट्रेडिशन में कई मोनेस्ट्रीज हैं जिनमें इसको काफ़ी लंबे समय तक किया जाता है, इंक्लूडिंग chanting it 108 times लगातार। So there are many ways in which this is done. We'll do it 3 times this morning. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijja charana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarathi साथा देव मनुस्सानं बुद्धो भगवाति स्वाखातो भगवता धम्मो संदिट्ठिको अकालिको एहिपस्सिको औपनायिको पच्छत्तं वेदितव्यो विन्युहीति सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो ऊजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो सामीचपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अट्ठपुरुषपुद्गला एष भगवतो सावक संघो आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अंजलिकरणयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यखेतं लोकसाथी इतिपिसो भगवा अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरणसम्पन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरुषधम्मसारथि साथा देव मनुस्सानं बुद्धो भगवाति स्वाखातो भगवत्वा धम्मो संदिट्ठिको अकालिको एहिपस्सिको औपनायिको पच्छत्तं वेदितव्यो विन्युहीति सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो ऊजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो सामीचपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावक संघो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अट्ठपुरुषपुद्गला एष भगवतो सावक संघो आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अञ्जलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यखेतं लोकसाथी एतिपिसो भगवा अरहं सम्मा सम्बुद्धो विद्याचरणसम्पन्नो सुगतो लोकविदु अनुत्तरो पुरुषधम्मसारथी सत्था देवमनुस्सानं बुद्धो भगवाति स्वाख्यातो भगवता धम्मो संदिट्ठिको अकालिको एहि पस्सिको औपनयिको पश्चात्तं वेदितव्योऽन्युहीति सुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो उजुपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो न्यायपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो सामीचिपटिपन्नो भगवतो सावकसङ्घो यदिदं चत्तारि पुरुषयुगानि अट्ठपुरुषपुक्कला एष भगवतो सावकसङ्घो आहुनेयो पाहुनेयो दक्षिणेयो अञ्जलिकरणीयो अनुत्तरं पुण्यखेतं लोकसाथी. Okay, Hassan, back to you.
Sir, you are on mute.
Thank you, Bhante ji. We'll now meditate till 7:30. 7:30 बजे राजेश और दीपक थेरागाथा हमको समझाएंगे आगे. So till then we'll silently meditate. Over to you, Rajesh and Deepak, for Theragāthā study.
Thank you, sir. Deepak, you want to cover a couple of slides that you had, or you want me to cover that? Those?
Yeah, you can cover.
So we have to start from 33 or 34?
33.
Okay. Okay, so the next gatha is from Sopaka. So we'll study the story first. This is regarding Theragāthā. He was reborn in this Buddha age at Savatthi of a very poor woman. In her travel, his mother fell into a long, deep swoon, so that her kinsfolk said, "She is dead," and they bore her to the cemetery and prepared to cremate the body. But a spirit prevented the fire burning by a storm of wind and rain, so they went away. Then was the child born hale while the mother died, and the spirit in the human shape took the infant and placed it in the watchman's house, nourishing it for a time with suitable food. After that, the watchman adopted it, and the child grew up with his own son, Suppiya. And because of his birth in the cemetery, he became known as Sopaka, the waif. When he was 7 years old, it came to pass that the Exalted One, early in the morning, spread out his net of insight to contemplate what folks might be brought in. And seeing what, what the net enclosed, he went to the cemetery. The boy, impelled by his antecedents, approached the master with a gladdened mind and saluted him. The master taught him, so that he asked to leave the word, and when bidden to gain his father's consent, fetch the letter to the master. The father saluted and asked the master to admit the boy, and the master had him admitted and assigned him the study of fraternal love. He, taking this exercise and dwelling in the cemetery, soon acquired the corresponding jhana, and making that his base, he fostered insight and realized arhantship. As arhant, he showed in his verse to the other bhikkhus dwelling there the principle of the love exercises, bidding them makes no difference between those who were to them friendly, indifferent, or hostile. For all alike, their love should be one and the same in its nature, and should include all the realms, all beings of all ages. So we'll study the verse now. Yathapi ek puttasrim piyasmim kusali siya evam sabbesu panesu sabbat kuslo siyati. So the translation goes as, just as a mother would be good to her beloved and only son, so to creatures all and everywhere, let one be good. And so yathapi ek puttassim, yathapi is jaise ek puttassim, matlab the mother who only has one son, usko jitna प्यार करेगी mother. Piyasmim kusli siya, piyasmim is beloved.
फुल स्क्रीन कर सकते हैं प्लीज?
हाँ जी. So piyasmim प्यार से आया है कि जैसे एक पुत्र वाली माता प्यार करेगी, कुशली सिया, कुशल. सर ये इसमें कुशल मेरिटोरियस और सिया मीन्स व्हाट? सर यू आर ऑन म्यूट.
करती है जैसे से करने के सेंस में.
ओके, करती है. एवं सब्बेसु पाणेसु, एवं मीन्स सो इन दिस वे, सब्बेसु इज सबके लिए, पाणेसु प्राणी, सब्बत कुशलो सिया, सब्बत इज एवरीवेयर, कुशल सिया is किया, right? So the another translation goes like, just as a woman would be good towards her only beloved only son, so one should be good to all living creatures everywhere. So इसकी story बहुत interesting थी. You know, this is like he was raised in a cemetery.
या एक्चुअली सोपाक का पाली वर्ड का अर्थ ही होता है आउटकास्ट, चंडाल. चंडाल उसी को कहते हैं जो उन्हीं को उस कास्ट को कहते थे चंडाल पुराने भारत में, जो डोम का काम करते थे,
क्रिमेशंस का
शमशान घाट पे रहते थे, उनको ही सिखाया जाता था. तो उस सेंस में उसका नाम भी वही पड़ गया. हालांकि इसने ट्रांसलेट वाइफ कर दिया है स्ट्रीट अर्चिन, बट एक्चुअली पाली वर्ड का मतलब ही आउटकास्ट. वेरी.
सो तो जो वॉचमैन कह रहे थे वो चांडाल थे.
या मतलब जनरल एक टेंडेंसी थी ना, जो शमशान में रहते थे. शमशान में रहने के साथ बहुत सारे लोग होते हैं ना. एक तो जो वन बहुबान धन जो लकड़ियां लाता है, इकट्ठी करता है, ऑल दोस पीपल दे आर bracketed as of the same category generally.
Okay, so the next one is,
So Rajesh, just one moment. So Dharsa, this जो कर्णीय मित्त में जो स्टैंजास हैं वो यहाँ से आए हैं या ये वहां से आया है?
वो इंडिपेंडेंट है एक्चुअली. वो तो भगवान की वाणी है. ये जो अरहंत थे उनको, क्योंकि उसकी इनकी जो कर्मठान है उनको मैत्री का दिया गया ना, जब मैं बताया ना, मैत्री का कर्मठान दिया गया, जैसे अभी राजेश ने पढ़ के सुनाया. सो दैट मस्ट बी हिज ओन अंडरस्टैंडिंग एंड इनसाइट.
So don't you think it's a considerable coincidence? माता यथानियम पुत्तम is exactly the same. So
बाकी उसमें आता है अनुरखे. तो इसमें थोड़ी डिफरेंट है. कुशली सिया, उसका कुशल चाहती है. इट्स क्वाइट सिमिलर. या उसमें एवं सब पानेसु अनुरखे, one should protect one in the same manner.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise the intention and the जो आप कह रहे हैं कि उनकी डायरेक्शनैलिटी तो सेम ही है. Whether he said it after hearing Karaniya Metta Sutta.
Right. We don't know. और दूसरा धर साहब ये बताइए, ये जो कहानी थी where Metta is the object and actually the translation even says brings about Jhan. You know, is this how canonical is it? I mean, if I may really split hair technically, how do we understand this? Because we listen, we hear, our teachers teach us about metta and so forth as objects of jhan, but this is the first time I'm really reading it from something that may be at least quasi-canonical. So,
Yeah,
would you like to say something about it?
metta is one of the recommended objects for jhana. There's no doubt on that.
Yeah, but not in the suttas, isn't it?
No, indirectly it is there in the sutta also. It is in Vishuddhi Magga primarily.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Indirectly, the understanding can be developed that, yeah, it's not spoken of as a kammatthana, but it's seen that it will lead to that. That there are some suttas where this kind of mention is there. I remember to have seen it.
So यहाँ ये जो कह रहे हैं that the Buddha assigned him such and such object, this, yeah, where is this? I've forgotten where the source are, so I'm just checking that either from yourself or Rajesh.
ये तो उनकी commentaries है ना on these Theragāthā पे जो commentaries है उसका.
Okay.
And then there is a Kosi canonical book called Apadan, जिसमें इनकी lives है. तो उससे
वहाँ से, okay.
And I think, sir, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is said that these commentaries came from the words of Theras themselves. उन्होंने जब वो बोले कि भाई हमें about their past, that is kind of inscribed as commentaries.
Yeah, that's what is generally believed.
No, sure. No, I understand that history. I'm first trying to just figure out कि जो Rice Davis का translation वो जो है with respect to the object, whether even that is common to you. Sorry, Dharsav, you were saying something. Sorry.
ठीक बात है बिल्कुल. The issue is that in most of these apadan especially कहा जाता है कि जो थेरागाथा में तो उनके वर्सेस को रिकॉर्ड किया गया, लेकिन जो उनके साथ बैठे थे उनको उन्होंने और भी कुछ बात कही होंगी तो वो सब जोड़ के अपादान में डाल दी गई, ऐसा कहा जाता है. I mean, ऐसा अंडरस्टैंडिंग है क्लियर. बिकॉज अबाउट थेरी गाथा में आपको याद होगा हमने कई सारी कहानियां पढ़ी जो थेरियों ने खुद बाद में बताई, बट इन दी वर्सेस देयर वाज ओनली वन वर्स और टू वर्सेस.
And there are two sopakas in the canon.
Yeah, that is a big issue. Many people have same name. Supaya भी, तिस्सा जैसे बहुतों के नाम तिस्सा हैं. So commentaries में लिखा हुआ भाई ये कौन सा तिस्सा है, that is for anybody to guess. कई जगह दो तिस्सा के अलग अलग थेराज के वर्सेस भी अलग अलग हैं, तो कौन सा वाला कौन सा तिस्सा है थोड़ा कई जगह ऐसा भी लिखा हुआ है.
Okay, so we go to the next one, which is Posiya Theragāthā.
इंसिडेंटली जो इससे पहले हमने पढ़ी थी ना सुप्पिया की, वो भिक्खु सोपाका के साथ ही वो उनका एक तरह से को धम्मा फेरर ऑफ हिम, से दोनों करीब करीब साथ ही बने थे. तो ये भी शायद उसमें किसी कमेंट्री में मेंशन्ड है.
Yeah, Suppiya is supposed to be the watchman's son, no?
Yeah, so
The real son. He's the adopted son.
they were kind of brothers, you can say, in a sense.
So it mentions, I think there was another son Suppiya in the story also.
Yeah.
So we'll read the story. Posiya. He was reborn in this Buddha age at Savatthi as the son of very wealthy counselor and the younger brother of Thera Sangamaji. When he was grown up, he married, but when a son was born to him, he, being impelled by the order of things belonging to the last span of life, grew anxious concerning birth and the like. So he left the world and dwelt alone in the forest, exercising himself in the four truths. And soon after he won arhantship. Then he went to Savatthi to worship the Exalted One and came to his home. There his former wife entertained him, and unaware of his disposition, was desirous of drawing him back by her attractions. Thera, thinking, alas, the fool of desire has designs even on such as me, said no word, but rose up and went away into the forest. And the bhikkhus there said to him, "Why, friend, are you come back too quickly? Have you not seen your people?" The Thera told them what had taken place and recited this verse. Anasanvara eta nitymev vijanata gama aranyamagamma tato geham upavisi tato uttaya pakkami anamateva posiyati mattetva. So the translation is, it's always better for a smart person to avoid sharing a seat with such woman. I went from village to the wilderness, and from there I entered a house. Though I was there to be fed, I got up and left without taking leave. Anasanvara is anasan. Asan is baithna. Anasan vara, not near, not approached. Eta of, sir, ye anasan vara eta means?
उसमें ना आसन और वरा भी है ना.
हाँ जी.
वरा मीन्स श्रेष्ठ.
अच्छा.
आपने उसको स्मार्ट कर दिया है. वर कहते हैं ना, वो हमारे कई चैंटिंग में आता है, वर दो वरन्यु, श्रेष्ठ है.
अच्छा, it is always श्रेष्ठ not to do this.
कोई भी श्रेष्ठ जो होगा, वराय ना हो ना, श्रेष्ठ के लिए नजदीक जाना ठीक नहीं है.
अच्छा, श्रेष्ठ के लिए नजदीक जाना ठीक नहीं. ओके. नित्यमेव, सो नित्यमेव में नित्यमेव इज गोइंग नियर.
नित्य में होना चाहिए.
अच्छा. नित्यमेव विजानता. विजानता is knowing. Gama is गांव. अरण्य गाम गम्मा. अरण्य is forest. Forest गाम गम्मा, forest से आते हुए. Having come from the forest. Tato, from that place. Upavisi. Anamattetva posio. Anamattetva is without addressing, and posio is referring to himself. Right. So the translation, the next translation, alternate translation is, these women are always best when not approached by one who knows. Coming from the village to the forest, from where I entered the house. Rising up from there, I, who deserve to be fed, Posia, went without having taken my leave. सर, ये अगर बिना स्टोरी के सुनते तो कुछ समझ नहीं आता सर.
That is true. The context ही समझ नहीं आता कि क्या हुआ, उठ के क्यों चला गया.
Sir, but ये इस तरह के, this seems like just a sentence that he mentioned. ये थेरगाथा में सर डालने का क्या वो है? जनरली थेरगाथा में वो चीजें होती हैं जो these are the insights from Theras, especially after they became arhant or stuff like that. This seems like just an incident.
Yeah, but it has a teaching in it. And of course, this question you should ask Bhante Mahakassap rather than asking me. मैं क्या जवाब दे
हमारे लिए तो आप ही हैं सर मार्गदर्शक।
मैं क्या जवाब दे सकता हूँ? Who am I to reply? But obviously there is a teaching. भैया अपने गांव घर जाओ तो जरा संभल के जाओ.
Sir, there is a question by Amrita ji. Who does these women refer to?
These women is a translation done. It actually refers. That's not directly implicit in the sentence. It is a translation by somebody. What it actually refers to is not really known. There's no mention of these women there in the sutta, in the word actually. It only says not to go near them. So from Gama, Ananya Gamana, मतलब आप अगर अरण्य से गांव जा रहे हो तो संभल के रहो. Basically, it is that idea that if you are going from village, from forest dweller, अगर गांव में जाता है, तो one should be careful, especially if you go back to your home and then you have had a wife there. She would, in her own natural way, want that her husband should come back. Obviously, that is natural. I would say it's a natural wish for the wife, because she doesn't know what has he been doing and what is his present state of attainment, or whatever word you may use it. So to me, it seems quite natural. So it seems more like an advice, which I think is Bande, you would like to say?
It's really not so difficult, isn't it? This is really, if we apply, if we think about it, jo sara realm of guarding the senses hai, guarding the senses is probably not the right translation, but jo indriya samvar ka sara preparatory ground हमें बताया जाता है, where यदि हमारा mind incline होने लग रहा है, या अगर हम चाहते हैं कि हमारा mind incline हो towards wisdom, towards breaking away from a broad materialistic approach, then quite obviously to be careful about the nature of influences, I mean, those could be any influences on oneself, is part of the practice, part of the path, isn't it? That's what, like art shield maybe. What is the whole thing with entertainment, with being careful about sleep, with moderating food, with decoration, you know? So I think for anybody who is even mildly serious about the path, such injunctions are pretty, they're actually the foundation. You can't even start. If you expect that I can carry on with business as usual, and then, you know, I can still walk the path, then, so that's how I see it. It's in that broad sense I see it.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's foundational practice. Basically, our teachers teach it as foundational practice. But all foundational practices, as we have been discussing in the last few days, they actually are the beginning, but they're also the end. They go right through till the end. And at some point, I notice a lot of these things just become very natural. They don't remain practices. I mean, they don't need to be, they don't take so much effort. A lot of these things just become quite natural. But anyway, that's how I understand what we should try and derive from something like this.
So, but this should be the other way around also. So we've not heard many, female jo practitioners mentioning this, that don't sit near males.
Well, if you read the Bhikkhuni Patimokh, it's full of that. Just depends on what we consume. And the issue is not male or female. Interestingly, by the way, just as an aside, in Thailand, they consider monks to be a different gender, by the way. So actually the understanding is that, you do begin to transcend the notion of male, female. Anyway, the issue is not that. No? The issue is simply how we are dealing with sense contact. That's how I understand it. So all sorts of sense contact. I mean, there you may be a person for whom sexuality may not be the biggest fetter. There might be other fetters, for example. So the issue is to be intelligent enough to realize कि यार मैं अटकता कहाँ हूँ, and then if I keep feeding myself that sort of sense input, there's basically no chance. So that's how I understand. Darsa, would you like to make it a little less blunt than how I've said it?
यहाँ पे specifically is mentioned about, avoid certain situations. You can, because it's not mentioned about woman or man, or he's saying anya sanvara. So you should avoid, you should not go, those who know better should not go near them. That's what his translation would be. So the implication is quite obvious, isn't it? And the fact of lust is very prominent. I mean, there's no doubt on that. Out of the 22 indriyas, Purush Indriya and Ithi Indriya are also mentioned specifically. So we have to really not kind of, in the modern context of liberatism, forget that those basic attractions are very powerful. And they have their purpose in the general world. It's not something, they're not kind of sin in themselves, but for one who is moving on the path to enlightenment, one has to see the captivating power of Mara there, and therefore try to be excessively careful in that direction. Because that's a very powerful force. Just depends on that. For most of us. For some, maybe, as Bhanteji said, maybe for some it is not. Fine. So there is a often misunderstood dialogue between Ananda and Buddha, towards the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, because towards the end, as Ananda realizes that the Lord is not going to be there, he asks all possible questions. And one of them is, what should be your attitude towards women? And obviously, it's man talking about women. Same thing will apply in the other direction. He said, you should not look at them. Now you say, what is this? What is this? What is Buddha saying? Then he said, but if you have to interact with them, you should not, if you happen to look at them, then you should not speak to them. But if you have to speak, then you should be mindful. You should be equanimous. So there's a series of, I don't exactly remember the sequence. There's so many things he mentions, eventually saying, guard yourself, guard yourself, guard yourself. And he's talking to a person like Ananda. So you have to see the importance of what is being said by Bhanteji. Of course, it applies to all sense doors. Whatever is one's Achilles heel, there one should be careful.
Yeah, that's my point. Thank you for making that clarification. It is true that obviously the whole realm of sexuality, and perhaps I'd add food to it, are the two big ones that keep us going. But so sure, I think कई बार मैंने ये नोटिस किया है हम सबके लाइफ में that ये जो guarding the senses का जो पूरा दायरा है, sometimes it just never comes up, and so I thought it's a good opportunity to underline कि to be careful about what one is consuming.
It's a part of Samavayama actually. That's the basis of it. Samavayama means guarding the senses. Because that's how the world impinges on us, through the senses. And then unwholesome tendencies would arise. तो unwholesome tendencies ना arise करें, उसके लिए ज़रूरी है कि हम जो भी सेंसरी इनपुट आ रहा है उसके प्रति सजग रहें, उसकी फीलिंग को जाने और उसको आगे बढ़ने ना दें. That's true of everything. That's very true, of course. That's a heart of practice for all of us, actually. Should be, I would say. Should be the heart of practice for all of us. Especially once we identify by कौन सी इंद्रिय हमको सबसे ज़्यादा, we start with the one which is most strongly pulling your attention. किसी के लिए कुछ है, किसी के लिए कुछ है, किसी के लिए कुछ.
Sir, with this unrestricted access to internet and this bombardment of digital content,
Yes.
this is extremely dangerous, and sir, especially for younger generation and kids, it is so difficult to even restrain some of it.
Yeah, very difficult. जब तुम IIT में थे तब तो शायद था ही नहीं ना ये. तो बच गए तुम.
नहीं सर, बट अभी क्या है ना कि बिकॉज एक्सेस ऑफ इंटरनेट, तो बिकॉज सेवरल रीजंस के लिए चाहिए आजकल के बच्चों को, चाहे वो ऑनलाइन क्लासेस हैं, चाहे वो पढ़ाई है, चाहे कुछ भी है, बट एक्सेस टू इंटरनेट गिव्स यू सो मेनी अदर थिंग्स. एक बार आप यूट्यूब पे जाएंगे तो कहां से कहां कंटेंट जाता है, यू नेवर नो.
I remember in late 2000s, we had a meeting and it was decided that hostel में 1 बजे रात को internet बंद कर दिया जाए. It was actually done for some time because people were just सारी रात वही देखे जा रहे हैं, सुबह क्लास में नहीं आ रहे, फिर getting into bad habits and all kind of, it created a kind of cascading effect because people are consuming what they would consume at that age with all the kind of adult sites available. सारी रात वही करे जा रहे हैं, फिर क्या पढ़ेंगे और क्या करेंगे.
So what is the way out? Internet access तो avoid करना बहुत मुश्किल है.
One has to be, I mean, if you have teenagers, children there, you have to be very careful and see that what he is visiting. There's no other possibility. You can't, I mean, unless you have a very enlightened being taking birth through you as a son or daughter, otherwise you have problems. That's a part of the additional parental responsibility.
But sir, continuously monitoring what children are doing also has this trust issue with them, right? They will keep saying that, why you don't trust me?
It has to be done tactfully. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. But I did it, let me put it very bluntly. Review the history. And when the child is sleeping, you review the history. That's it. Simple. आप तो expert लोग हैं, आप कुछ भी कर सकते हैं. But there's no denial of that fact. It's a very crucial thing. For a teenager, as it grows up, as he or she grows up, it will have a phenomenal impact on the mind. Phenomenal impact on the mind. What food one is consuming, it's food basically. What nutriment क्या दिया जा रहा है? And that's why Buddha talks of the 4 different nutriment, not just kavali, karo, aharo is a gross food. Then there is consciousness, contact. Contact is a food. इंद्रियों में जो contact हो रहा है, that is a food, which will nourish you accordingly. So it's a very, very severe problem. So one has to be. So as a parent, you have one more response. Just as you prevent your children from going to dangerous places, same thing, it's same kind.
Yes, sir.
And sir, moreover, it's like any addiction, like drugs हो गया, कुछ भी हो जाए, तो जैसा कि आपने बताया था कि अगर हम उनको alternate कुछ दे पाए, it's not कि आप रोक देंगे frustrate, अगर हम शायद बचपन से उनको एक एहसास हो जाए कि अच्छा ये सुख है और ये वो वाला सुख है, थोड़ा सा अल्टीमेट तो नहीं, मतलब फिर भी थोड़ा भी एहसास हो जाएगा, तो दे विल बी लाइक कि खुद डिस्क्रिमिनेट कर पाएंगे शायद कि हाँ ठीक है, दिस इज इट एंड दिस वाज दैट एंड मे बी दैट इज बेटर. स्पोर्ट्स हो गया, सिंगिंग हो गया, कुछ उनको अल्टरनेट तो चाहिए होगा, क्योंकि उस समय क्रिएटिविटी इतनी ज्यादा है. दे नीड समथिंग एंड दे कैन कंपेयर. probably like that works. Like मैं जब था तो हम लोग कल्चरल एक्टिविटीज में लग जाते थे, तो हमें पता था कि दिस इज मोर फन, ड्रामेटिक्स इज मोर फन, सिंगिंग इज मोर फन, समथिंग लाइक दैट. सो इफ वी इंट्रोड्यूस पेरेंटल, जो आपने बोला, मुझे लगता है ये एक जिम्मेदारी है कि बच्चों को 10-12 साल से ही ना उनको इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिया जाए कि देयर इज सो मच फन इन लाइफ, लाइक क्रिएटिविटी, लाइक ध्यान भी इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं और संगीत भी इंट्रोड्यूस कर सकते हैं. सो दे विल कंपेयर इट देन बोथ होते हैं. सो दैट मेक्स सेंस.
Maybe it depends on child really. Especially with meditation, one should be very extra careful. I would very respectfully submit, very careful. It can bounce back such a medicine that when he grows up, he just gives up, throws it off. If out of our over enthusiasm we teach and force children to do meditation, it's a disaster. I have known it for many years and I have a real experience of it, so I'm not talking theoretically. I have seen institutions where meditation was compulsory made and what racket they created. And so meditation के बारे में खास तौर पे बहुत बहुत केयरफुल रहना चाहिए.
ये सच है सर, ये आप सच बोल रहे हैं सर. मेरे साथ इंसिडेंट हुआ था जब मैं 10 डेज का कोर्स करने गया था तो सोना में. तो उधर कुछ लोगों ने कुछ बच्चों को ऐसे ही भेज दिया 10 दिन के लिए, क्योंकि वो शैतानी करते थे. एंड दे वर 3-4 बच्चे थे, वो यंगस्टर जैसे थे, तो वो बाद में मेडिटेशन के बाद हल्ला मचा रहे थे एंड दे वर क्रिएटिंग रस्कल्स ओवर देयर. तो इनमें मेरे को तो थोड़ा सा उनसे नाराजगी भी हो गई थी, मेरा फाइट भी हो गया था. इट वाज 10 days साइलेंट कोर्स एंड आई वाज फाइटिंग विद देम ओवर दिस इशू. तो एंड दे सेड, उनके पेरेंट्स ने बोला कि इसलिए भेज दिया कि सुधर जाएंगे. तो आपने सही बोला, वी शुड बी केयरफुल. यस.
So we should, parental responsibilities are increasing now. So that is the issue. And parents are becoming themselves excessively busy. तो क्या करें? It's a pretty frightening scenario. I can see how parents are busy with work from home. तो और खतरनाक मुसीबत है. So you have a real problem, but then there's big responsibility.
In Maharashtra, this our Ratnakar Gaikwadji, former Chief Secretary, we are organizing a virtual Sunday Dhamma school for school children. It is made compulsory. There is a group, and they are right from the Anapan to the basic ethics Dhamma. They are conducting it 11 to 1 o'clock. So this is one of the way we can stop and we can develop this mindfulness among the children since beginning, and what is good, what is bad, how to avoid these things. All these things are being taught. In the early stage is very good, this thing, giving a great impact. So this is the only way we can divide this our attention of our young generations to lead to the right path. That is our following services. And this should be across the India. Our Bhanteji also, they are conducting the classes in the Buddha Vihar here in Maharashtra. And people are giving response. Sometimes some are not giving response, but those who are enlightened, those who are following the right path, they are definitely going for regularly. They are sending their children for this the virtual classes now. Bhanteji's comments, please, in this. This is a response.
Well, I would say, because I have a deep experience of this, never make it compulsory. I know Ratnakarji very well. I have been...
Not compulsory. Not compulsory. This is only volunteers. This is only volunteers. Those who are willing, they can...
No, it's compulsory for all children. That's
yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is only... Again, it is a parent responsibility. This is parents. They are making children to attend the class instead of going for other picnic. That is things, sir. Thank you, sir.
One has to have a proper methodology evolved for keeping it entertaining, making the things, in a manner that children can really benefit from it.
Yes.
While not doing it is not the solution, but doing it in a manner where we don't follow a straight jacket ki baith ke anapani karo.
Yeah.
Only
interest to be developed. That is the only point.
There are various ways in which It's not just meditation. There are 1,000 other ways
No,
by
no,
which
no.
you can develop good qualities among children.
Yeah.
So we
Thank
should investigate. And as a comment has been written, I think Ajahn Jaisaro is doing some very foundational work in Thailand for children. So we can look at it from that perspective. He has been advising the educational system of Thailand for, but in a very kind of subtle manner. So that's
So do we have any Vishal or anybody else? Do we have any pointers to Ajahn Jaisaro's work, especially in schools? Any things to read or?
maybe.
I think you can actually go to his website. I think there's quite a bit of extensive information on it.
Okay. Thanks.
I also wanted to submit one thing, this, but because I have an experience on that when we give a course, some small course to children and ask them to meditate, and then if it is a lodging and boarding also included in that, where they go for that retreat, what I feel is then my experience is when children are put in the same room after that, and they share room with 2 or 3 other children, problem starts there. Because my son, when he was young, and I asked him to go for Vipassana camp, and then he was with the boys, and he wanted to do it very seriously. He had 2 experiences which I'm sharing. One was that the teacher who was giving whatever sermons to be given, he asked a question from the teacher, and teacher snubbed it. And he said, don't ask silly questions, just sit down and meditate. That was the first wrong thing which happened at the age of 17 or 16 he was. The second thing was when he entered into the room and he was told to keep quiet, and he wanted to follow it very seriously, but the others would not. So there again, and that day and this day, he has never gone again for that particular, now he's grown up. So, but point is that particular impression remains in the mind of the child. So we have to be very careful about it when we have to handle children. How one thing which I was listening, that we don't have to really be after their life, if they don't want it to, it's fine. But growing them in a manner that they understand what is good and bad, I think that's enough. अपने आप ही करेंगे फिर तो करेंगे आप इनको जबरदस्ती नहीं कर सकते, वो मैंने करके देख लिया है दोनों बच्चे मेरे आज एक 40 साल का है 45 साल के हैं, तो दोनों they are fine. They are very good individuals as far as their life at present is concerned, and they have all the best things one expects from their grown-up people. This is what I personally wanted to share.
जब अजन जयसारो से ये सवाल पूछा जाता है बाय पेरेंट्स कि हम क्या करें, कैसे करें, जो पहली चीज वो कहते हैं वो ये कहते हैं कि it is your behavior, it is your acharan, it is how you conduct yourself which is the primary teaching. So whether they go to a camp or not or whatever is way down the line, it's really how dharma is in your life. So I think while we all hold forth, maybe it's worth for each of us to examine within, to look here, what's happening with me and how do I conduct myself, and is there dharma in my, behavior and in how my mind works. And at least according to him, that's the first place to start. So.
Thank you, Bhamtiji. So we'll continue. So the next one is Samanya Kahani. So we'll read the story first. Samanya Kahani. He was reborn in this Buddha age as the son of a wanderer and was converted to the religious life when he saw the Exalted One perform the twin miracle. And through jhana, he attained arhanship. Now a wanderer named Katyana, whom he had known as a layman, had lost all the support from the laity since the Buddha had arisen and was destitute. He came to the Thera and said, "You of the Sakyans, who have won much fame and support, live happily, but we are distressed and destitute. What should one do to compass happiness both in this life and the next?" The Thera said, "Happiness is not of the world. This for one who undergoes the suitable procedure to get it, and who gets it is alone to be called the unqualified happiness." And to illustrate this by his own attainment, he uttered this verse. Sukham sukhatto labate tadacharam kattichinna pappoti yasassa vaddati yo ariyam angikam annisam ujum bhaveti maggam amtassa pattiyati. So the translation goes like, seeking happiness, they find it through this practice. They get a good reputation and grow in fame. Those who develop the direct route, the noble eightfold path for realizing the deathless. And the alternate translation is, practicing this, he who seeks happiness gains happiness and obtains glory. His fame increases who develops the noble eightfold straight direct road for the attainment of the undying. Some of the words that can be looked at: Sukham sukhatto labate tadacharam. Sukham is happiness, sukh. Labate milna, labh hona. Tadacharam is conducting oneself for that purpose. Proper tadacharam, tad acharam, I think isse aaya hoga. And kittincha papati, he attains the state of far and wide reputation. So ये मुझे सर समझ में नहीं आया. What does that mean? kittincha papati का source क्या है?
कीर्ति का मतलब वो कीर्ति, ठीक है.
Okay.
पापोति मतलब प्राप्त करता है.
Right. So ये तो आसान है सर. कीर्ति
मतलब यश, बढ़ती मतलब बढ़ता है, यश बढ़ता है, कीर्ति प्राप्त करता है. So it's in Hindi it becomes pretty straight.
Yeah. Yo arya athangikam anjasam. So yo arya athangikam anjasam. Anjasam is straight, and ujum. So anjasam is also straight and ujum is also straight.
I don't know. I'll have to check really.
ये अरे मठंग मंजसंग है ना शायद.
नहीं, ये अरियम अठंगिकम is eightfold.
न्यजसंग, यहाँ लिखा न्यजसंग, हाँ, न्यजसंग. So I do not know how to इसको तोड़ना कैसे. अठंगिकम तो समझ में आ गया. आर्य मतलब आर्य अष्टांगिक मार्ग.
अष्टांगिक मार्ग.
मंजसंग, मंजसंग क्या होगा?
अंजसंग नहीं है ना. अठंगिकम अंजस. अंजस का मतलब path. अंजकम is the path.
Path, अच्छा.
Path.
Ujum straight.
आर्य अष्टांगिक मार्ग.
अंजकम ujum means straight path.
And bhaveti is bhavit. Maggam is marg. Amatasya, amratva, and pattiya is attainment. So it basically sukham sukhatto lavate tadacharam. Seeking happiness, they find it through this practice. जिनको सुख, जो who are looking for sukh, they find it through this practice. कितिंच पापोति यशस्य वदति, to get a good reputation and grow in fame. सर इनका उस स्टोरी से क्या रिलेशन बना सकते हैं सर?
उसको वो जो उनका मित्र था ना कात्यायनी, बता रहे हैं कि मैंने कैसे सुख प्राप्त किया, तुम भी वैसे प्राप्त करो, परेशान क्यों रहते हो, अष्टांगिक मार्ग को फॉलो करो, ये सीधा पा रास्ता है सुख प्राप्त करने का, कीर्ति का, यश भी बढ़ेगा, कीर्ति भी बढ़ेगी. तो ये बेसिक सिंपल वर्ड्स, दिस इज व्हाट इज ही ट्राइंग टू टेल.
एक्चुअली लिंक इस तरह से है ना कि वो बिकॉज ही वाज डूइंग समथिंग एल्स एंड अब उसको
जो भी था, द पर्सन वाज नॉट ऑब्वियसली, जो भी आपने स्टोरी पढ़ी थी ना राजेश जी,
हाँ जी,
उसमें था ना उनका मित्र था एक कात्यायनी जो भी था, जो उनका पहले से जानते थे जिसको, और जो अभी भी बेचारा परेशान ही रहता था, तो उसको कहा कि भाई मैंने ये फॉलो किया है, इससे लाभ हुआ, तुम भी फॉलो कर लो. सो इज बेसिकली जस्ट शेयरिंग हिज इनसाइट्स विद हिम.
जी. Okay, so we'll read the next one. Kuma's son. Reborn in this Buddha age in the Avanti country at the town of Velukanda in the family of a householder, he was called Nanda, but his mother's name was Kuma, whence he was known as Kuma's son. He entered the order after hearing the Venerable Sariputta preach and studied on the slope of the frontier hills. But it was only after he had gone to hear the Exalted One that he was able so to correct his exercises as to realize arhantship. As arhant, he saw that the other bhikkhus showed excess in bodily needs, and he admonished them in the doctrine. And then he said that. So the sutta goes like, Sadhu sutam sadhu charitakam sadhu sadha anekat viharo athpuchanam padikkhana kammam etam samanch kinchan sasa samanch akinchan sasa. So sutam is sutta is learning, charitam is charitra, sutam sadhu charitam sadhu sada anekat viharo. Anekat viharo is viharo rehna, and anekat is homeless living. Athpuchanam is arth puchna. Padakyan kammam. Kammam means karm. Padakyan means that are, I think, skillful actions that are skillful. Etam samanch akinchan. Etam samanch akincham. Samanya is samana. Samana is ascetic or bhikkhu. Akinchan, who has nothing. So it basically translated as hearing. The translation is hearing is good, action is good. The houseless life is always good. The questioning of aim, doing what is skillful. This is the ascetic's state for one who has nothing.
इसमें क्वेश्चनिंग ऑफ एम से क्या मतलब है?
Questioning of
एम Questioning of aim.
आवाज साफ नहीं है आपकी.
मैंने कहा क्वेश्चनिंग ऑफ एम का क्या मतलब है?
एम कहाँ पे?
आई थिंक अथ पुच्छनम की ट्रांसलेशन है सर.
पूछना का मतलब है कि भाई उसका अर्थ क्या है, उद्देश्य क्या है ये पूछने का.
तो इसका ट्रांसलेशन तो गड़बड़ हो गया ना फिर. वो क्वेश्चनिंग ऑफ एम तो गड़बड़ हो गया.
मतलब तो अंग्रेजी की भाषा है तो उसको आप
ये समझ में तो आ गया कि आप जैसे अभी बता रहे हैं अर्थ पूछना मतलब अर्थ पूछना.
उसका
किसी चीज का अर्थ.
अर्थ इन द नॉट इन द लिटरल सेंस ऑफ ट्रांसलेशन बट इन द सेंस ऑफ उसका उद्देश्य क्या है. तो उस सेंस में कहा जाता है काम जो कर रहे हैं उसका उद्देश्य क्या है.
Questions on the meaning, actions that are skillful.
जब ascetic की लाइफ का मतलब है कि आपको इन्वेस्टिगेट करना चाहिए कि क्या मैं कर रहा हूँ जीवन में. तो अभी हमारी चैंटिंग में भी आता ना, और जो 10 भिक्षु में काम बताए जाते हैं उसमें ये भी है ना कि भाई पीरियडिकली क्वेश्चन करता रहे मेरा काम जो है स्किलफुल है नहीं है, अनस्किलफुल है, और क्या किस उद्देश्य पे किया जा रहा है. कोई लिमिटेड उद्देश्य है कि फाइनल उद्देश्य रखा हुआ है, कहीं छोटे से उद्देश्य से ही मैं प्रसन्न तो नहीं हो गया. सो इन दैट सेंस यू कैन सी इट इन ए जेनेरिक सेंस.
यानी मतलब सुनना ठीक है,
प्रश्न करना भी बहुत जरूरी है. जो आपके टीचर हैं, जो आपके सहायक हैं, जो आपके कल्याण मित्र हैं, पूछना भी बहुत आवश्यक. अपने से भी यू कैन आस्क विद इन वन सेल्फ ऑल्सो. मीमांसा इज वन ऑफ द विद्यापादास, कि जो भी आप काम कर रहे हैं उसको इन्वेस्टिगेट करें कि क्या जिस उद्देश्य से कर रहे हैं वो पूरा हो भी रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है. So in that sense it is a translation as a meaning.
Okay. So should we do the next one?
Yeah, I think 27 over, we can stop.
Okay.
Any other comment general if you have, and we can request Bante ji to give blessings. इतना टाइम नहीं है कि अगला ठीक से हम पढ़ पाए. Good. Request Bante ji for his blessings and closing homage. Any comments Bante ji would like to say?
Bhavatu Sabhamangala Rakhantu Sabdevata Sabbabutthana Bhavena Sada Sruti Bhavantu Te. Bhavatu Sabhamangala Rakhantu Sabdevata Sabbadhammanubhavena sada sukhi bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabbamangalam rakhantu sabbadevata sabbasanghan bhavena sada sukhi bhavantu te. Araham Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivati Akato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami.
So let's all join together in paying respects to Bhante ji. Naman. Dutiyampi. Tatiyampi. Thank you all. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सबका joining. The discussion is interesting. Thank you all. So hope to see you in the afternoon.